This is Lecture 2, Week 2 of Church Administration 201. Hello, this is Steve Googe. I welcome you to this lecture. Today I want to share with you some things that you will learn. We'll be talking about Jethro, Moses, and organizational leadership. And you will learn the location of the story of Jethro and Moses. You will learn the 4 Jethro Principles, and then the 4 principles of effective delegation. Let's get right into our presentation. The story of Jethro and Moses is found in Exodus chapter 18, verses 13 through 26. I'd like to read that to you using a modern translation. You'll remember that Moses has been involved in settling all the disputes of the people. He's listened to their complaints, and he's weary. We begin reading in verse 13. The next day, Moses took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, "What are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone, while everyone stands around you from morning till evening?" Moses replied, "Because the people come to me to get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me, and I am the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform the people of God's decrees and give them his instructions." "This is not good," Moses' father-in-law explained. "You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now listen to me, and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives. But select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smaller matters themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace." What a great story of delegated responsibility and delegated leadership. Maybe you remember the old story about the football game where one team came out on the field to play the coach of the other team. The coach felt he knew the plays better than anyone else. He knew the techniques better. He understood the other team better. So it only made sense that he would go out on the field and play the game single-handedly. The coach got the ball first and made a valiant effort to run back the kickoff, but he was tackled hard. He tried to run the ball, but never got anywhere. By the time the first series of plays was over, the coach could barely get up. Well, it's a humorous story, but many leaders are like that. They are very talented, but they are just one person. Moses was very talented. He was gifted by God, but he was just one person. Notice the first Jethro principle. Jethro understood that no one can do everything for very long. That person may do everything for a while, but before long he's going to get weary and not be able to do the job he's been called to do. The second Jethro principle says Jethro understood that burnout is one problem leaders face. People who have too many demands will burn out, and they'll leave the leadership position feeling defeated. Jethro told Moses, "You will wear yourself out. The work is just too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." We as leaders in the church need to be reminded of the fact that we can't do everything by ourselves. And we need to also recognize that burnout is a problem that many leaders face and experience. Burnout can rob you of your joy, can rob you of your enthusiasm. It can paralyze you. One of the things that I've noticed about burnout is that it sometimes causes a person's disposition to somewhat change. So here are 2 of the Jethro Principles I hope that you will learn to apply those in your own life. There are 2 more Jethro principles, as you will see on the next slide. Jethro understood that no one can do everything for very long. He also understood that burnout is one problem leaders certainly face. But in addition to that, you'll see on this slide that Jethro understood that a leader should focus on what they can do uniquely. Separate the essential things from the additional things. Jethro understood that a leader should focus on those things which he can do with a unique skill or ability. If they don't, then they will lose the important things in the shuffle. It wasn't that Moses wasn't busy, but in his busyness, he didn't have time to listen and to learn from the Lord. Jethro doesn't tell Moses to stop acting as a judge. Instead, he tells him to concentrate on the cases that are too hard for anyone else. Perhaps we would call those cases that had been appealed to a higher court or higher judge. This would free Moses up to teach the people. What would he teach them? Well, verse 21 in our passage from Exodus chapter 18 says, "This will free Moses to teach the people the decrees of God and show them the way to live and the duties they are to perform." Exodus chapter 18, verse 21. Good leaders know that things that others can do are things others should do. This frees the leader to do the things that they are called to do. A shared ministry is a strong ministry, and I want to encourage you to share your ministry wherever you serve. Jethro understood that delegating leadership is more efficient and more effective leadership. In verse 23 of Exodus 18 we read, "If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Jethro understood that delegation gives others the chance to know the joy of serving, and truly it is a joyful and satisfying experience to serve in an area where we really believe we're making a difference. This is an interesting cartoon. Notice the queen is watching the king. He has his paint bucket in one hand and his paintbrush in the other. He's painting the center stripe down the middle of the highway. And she says, "You have to delegate some authority." We need to delegate authority. And we're going to learn how to do some of that in just a moment. In the next slide, we want to talk about some principles that John Maxwell has shared, and these principles will help us in the art of delegation. They are important guidelines, and we'll look at them next. We can learn to delegate in a much more effective way if we learn some important guidelines. In just a moment, I want to share with you some information that I received over 15 years ago from John Maxwell. I want to share this information with you because I think it is very important. Now, if you learn to delegate properly and learn to delegate well, your work will be exponentially advanced. Here are some principles to go by. Choose. Your choice in the following areas will serve as a door that will open up for effective delegation. The first is timing. When should you delegate? Ask yourself, am I missing deadlines? Am I doing things someone else could do? Do those around me need a new world to conquer? If your answer is yes, it's time for you to start delegating. It's time for you to take off the hat of doing every job yourself and assume the responsibility of delegating to others. And then priorities. What tasks should you take on? Work from the following list. Responsibilities only you can perform, and there will be some of those, like vision casting and so forth. Tasks that yield the greatest return, and assignments that give you the greatest personal reward. Determine your top priorities using these guidelines and delegate or maybe even eliminate everything else. Now, under personnel, here are some questions to ask. Who should you delegate to? To find out, answer the following questions. What is needed? Who is available? Who is able? Who is willing? Who gets things done? Delegate to those who best meet these criteria. Number 2 is communicate. To achieve results you need, communication is very important, particularly among those people who are volunteers or who are on your staff. Communicate to them their worth. Show how much you value them personally and communicate that worth to other persons. It's amazing when you communicate the value of an administrative assistant to her husband. It's amazing how that word gets back to her and gives her such a good feeling about working for you. Communicate the value of the project. Make sure those you delegate to know what the project will accomplish for them and also for the organization. Also explain how the project is valuable to the team and how it achieves the goals of your church. Make sure you have a well-defined vision. Vision is absolutely key. Support. Let them know that you'll support their decisions. This doesn't mean you won't correct their mistakes, but you'll do it privately, one-on-one, with them by themselves. In the end, what matters are results, not that they are achieved a particular way. Communicate exactly what you want and when you want it done. Leave the methods up to the person you delegate the responsibility to. Control is number 3. People naturally take better care of something they consider theirs. Seek a good balance of responsibility, authority, and accountability. I've always said that individuals are lazy toward objectives that are not their own. And then fourth, coach. A coach is not a person who can play better than his team. He is one who can get his players to perform better than he can perform. To coach successfully, you must focus, constantly stay on your strategy, and constantly focus on your purpose and vision and mission. Share feedback. Take time to huddle. Evaluate everything. Spend time after an event has been concluded to determine what went right, what went wrong, how can we do it better next time. Be flexible. Be willing to adjust to the situation. If you don't delegate, you limit your productivity to what you alone can accomplish. But when you delegate effectively, you not only increase your potential and that of your organization, but you facilitate the personal growth of the people who are around you. Imagine not just meeting deadlines, but beating them. And imagine spending time doing the things you enjoy most while allowing others to do what they do best. In leadership, it's called a win-win scenario, and it will take your church to a new level. Practice these important guidelines of delegation, and your church will be affected in a positive way.